When I was a little girl, my dad had a restaurant. And one day he came home and he said to my mother, "We're having company for breakfast tomorrow." My mother said, "Breakfast?" She wasn't an early riser. And he usually did business in the restaurant, not at home. And he said, "No." He said, "There's a man in town that I need to talk to, and he's coming for breakfast. And he's from the South, so make a nice Southern breakfast." Well, my mother started to set up the dining room table, and my dad said, "No, no, no. Kitchen's good enough for him." So she argued for a while. But, as usual, he won. So we put a damask tablecloth on the old chrome-legged kitchen table. The ones with the yellow plastic seats that make your butt sweat when you sit on them for a while. Well, they came the next morning. My dad had picked this man up, and he came in, and he was quite distinguished-looking man. He had white hair, a white goatee, a white suit, and a black string tie. And he was introduced to my mother as the Colonel. He took her hand, kissed her hand, and bowed. "So happy to meet you, my dear." Well, my mother got all giggly. And she served up a Southern meal that was to die for. Ham browned in a cast iron skillet. O'Brien potatoes, that was her maiden name. O'Brien potatoes, red-eye gravy, hot coffee, and homemade biscuits with honey. Now, my dad sat down and I sat down. My brother had been farmed out for the day because they knew I would behave and he probably wouldn't. And we started eating our breakfast. Well, it was delicious, and the men were talking business, but not a lot of business. Mostly the Colonel was talking to my mother. And he had one of her biscuits, broke it open, and the steam rose, and he took some honey and spread it on it, and he took one bite and went, "Ah, that's the best biscuit I ever ate." And he licked his fingers, and he wiped his chin with a damask napkin. Well, I'd had one biscuit, and the basket was there, and there were 12 biscuits when we started. My mother had one, my dad had one, I had one, the Colonel had one. 4. So there's 8 left. Well, I reached for the basket, and I got the look from my mother. The look that says, "Don't you dare." And so I picked it up, and I passed it to the Colonel. "Well, thank you, ma'am," he said to me. And he took another biscuit, and he broke it, and he put the honey on it, and he ate it, and licked his fingers, wiped his chin, put it down right in front of him. And I looked, thinking that he might pass the basket back. But he didn't. That old man ate every one of those biscuits. And then he asked my mother for the recipe. Now, today, if you have a meal with him, you might lick your fingers. You might get a biscuit, because his name was Colonel Harlan Sanders. But I want to tell you, they won't be as good as my mama's.